Hi, my name is Adi, and today I'm going to teach you the bending technique. If you haven't come across my channel before, I'm an experienced guitar teacher, so if you're looking to learn guitar and pick up on lots of different tips, then please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Today I'm going to talk about the bend, probably our most powerful technique on the guitar, certainly for lead guitar playing. One of my teachers once described this to me as a technique that should make you feel like you are pulling someone's guts out. So it's something we really need to have in the bag, and when we perform it, we need to perform it with accuracy and intent. So today we're going to look at the technique, the motions that you need to use, and also have a look at accuracy to make sure you're hitting the pitches that you need to hit accurately each time you play it. So first of all, let's have a look at the technique. We're going to do a bend today on the B string 13th fret, okay? And we're going to focus on the third finger for today's lesson. This is our most strongest bending finger. However, the technique still applies to the other fingers, and we can of course cover that in another lesson. But today we're going to look at the third finger. So what I'd like you to do first of all is place your third finger on the 13th fret of your B string. Push that note just there. What I'd also like you to do at the same time is take your second finger, so your middle finger, and place it on the same string right behind your third finger. So the two fingers should be touching each other, and they should both be touching the string. You will have more pressure on your third finger because that's a note that you're actually going to be playing. However, they are both still resting on the string. So if I was to take my third finger off, there's probably just enough pressure on there to play that next note. It's not squeezing it, but it's definitely resting down on that string, on the same string as the third finger. The first finger is also involved in this technique, but I don't want you to put this one on the string. All I want you to do with your first finger is just rest it on the side of your second finger. So all three fingers are involved in this. We're not involved in the little finger, that's just keeping clear out the way. But all these three fingers are going to be involved in the technique, mostly to support the third finger. Because if we were just to bend with the third finger by itself, there's a good chance that the finger will wobble around and we won't get the desired pressure that we need. But equally they help with muting, and I'll show you that as we go through the technique. So all three fingers involved, third finger on the note we want to play, second finger on the same string just behind it, still touching the third finger, and the first finger just lightly resting against the other fingers. You also see that the first finger is just slightly higher, okay, so it's actually touching the string above where I am at the moment. You won't always be able to do that from the start depending on the notes you're playing, but you definitely want it resting on this second finger. The hand position is really important for this technique. If you position your hand wrong, then the rest won't work. So if you look at the way my hand is shaped at the moment, the fingers are pointing across me. Okay, they're not pointing directly vertically, and there's no way they're pointing directly sideways, that's not possible. But they are pointing across. There's a diagonal position on the strings there. And that's facilitated by the way we hold the guitar behind the neck. So if I show you from behind, you'll notice that the thumb is at the top. I'm actually pivoting on the knuckle of my thumb, the inside of the knuckle. So if I take my hands, so my fingers off the frets, you'll see that I can freely move my hand around and pivot from that position quite easily. We don't want to be in a position where there's no movement, so you don't want to grab the guitar in this technique. Make sure it's just pivoting on that knuckle. Other thing to notice is if you look at my arm, okay, the arm is pointing across, so my arm is in this position. Okay, it's not completely vertical, it's not completely horizontal. I've got those both the wrong way around, but it doesn't matter. We work sort of half in between, okay, at a diagonal angle. Because ultimately what we're going to do to perform a bend is we're going to rotate the arm, and that's what creates the power behind it. We can either rotate the arm this way, or we can rotate the arm that way. And that gives us room to bend the string a long way. And all the power is in the arm. Okay, the power doesn't come from the fingers in this technique, which I'll show you in a second. So you want to have your arm in that position so you can rotate it both ways. And that would be the best position for this particular technique. Coming back round to the front, I'm now going to demonstrate the bend, and I want you to take note of a couple of things. If you look at the shape of my fingers, when you put them close together, they kind of make a little bit of a semicircle. or half moon type shape. They're not all in a straight line flat. So if you look close at your fingers, they should have a similar shape. We'll all be slightly different because we've got different lengths of fingers, but they should still have that little shape. And you'll see that move as we move through the bend. As I bend through this, I'm going to pick the right way around. You'll notice that my fingers straighten up as I move through the bending motion. So at the start, they're pointing across me. As I start bending through, they start straightening up. Now, when I say they straighten up, the fingers actually stay the same. Okay, it's just the position of the fingers that change. They retain this bend in the knuckle that we had at the start. So if you look at the start, there's always a bend in the knuckle, and that retains its bend throughout the technique. What I really want you to be careful of, and it's something which is a really common mistake and causes guitar injuries, is pushing with the knuckles. That's one of the worst things you can do with this bending technique and puts you at risk of tendinitis. So make sure that you retain that position of your fingers. Make sure they're always bent. The knuckles are always pointing that way. I don't want you pushing with your knuckles to try and create the bend. So we rotate the arm, and that is what allows the string to move up. It's quite easy to grip the string because I've got two fingers holding it. Now, if I was really, really sweaty in the middle of a gig, that becomes harder and harder, but that's just the nature of what we're doing. But by having the two fingers on makes me much less likely to drop the string or for it to slip out of the fingers because you've got the grip of the two fingers holding it. Equally, these fingers, they're going to be pushing into the strings above the one that you're playing. And that's where the first finger comes in handy, because if you look at the first finger, it's actually now touching the strings above the ones that I'm playing. It's not holding them down, because I'm not actually fretting with this, I'm just leaning it on the other fingers. But it just rests gently on them, which helps the muting, stops it from getting unwanted notes from the strings above. It can't completely rule them out, we have to double this up with right hand muting, but it's certainly a big help. And you'll find that it's mostly a help actually on the way down, because as we come down from the bend, the first finger tends to just gently rest on those strings above, and it's a bit more of a pronounced position from where we started. You'll notice the first finger is actually slightly higher from when I started the technique, where I had it down here. And that's just the friction of the strings, and that first finger just resting on top of them, which stops any unwanted notes pinging out or unwanted pull-offs from these strings. Now, you do need to couple this up with right hand technique. You will find with this, when you bend the string, there's a good chance that you could push it into your muting hand, the right hand, so you just need to give it a bit of clearance as you go. Rather than focusing too much on looking at your right hand throughout this technique, I'd like to try and feel that. Okay, so if you start finding yourself pushing into your right hand, just try and give it a feel of a bit of clearance. If you try and do it by vision, it's likely you'll give too much. Okay, you only want the slightest bit there. So again, let's look at this bend and what it sounds like. In this sideways position, with all those things we talked about, and we get our bend. Okay. Now notice the bend was quite smooth. You can hear the pitch changing quite clearly throughout the bend. Okay, it's not really jagged. We can make it jagged if we want to, but it's quite a smooth bend. From the side. Okay, so you can see that wrist rotating, creating that bend in motion. Now, one of the things you'll find with bending is that it gives you access to notes that you might not have on other instruments. Because what happens is we get to bend to pitches which are microtonal, so in between pitches. Now, this is very useful for us as guitarists. We can really play on this and purposely aiming for these microtonal bends can add a lot of tension to our playing and sort of play on the ears when we're trying to create those kinds of things. However, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't focus on pitch accuracy. We need to make sure that we're in full control of this. So a good way to develop control of this is to pick a note and then bend towards it. Now, there's no way of measuring this in terms of millimeters, centimeters, or anything like that, because depending where you are on the guitar, you'll need to bend the string at different lengths, and also different types of guitar will affect this. So you'll always be fighting if you've got a tremolo system like I have on the Strat. It's a lot more stable on a Les Paul, for example. So it's always going to be different, so you have to trust your ears on this one. So this is what we want to train. So what I'd like to do is to pick a note. We're going to use the same note we started with to bend, but we're going to bend up a whole tone. Now a whole tone is 2 frets. So if I count up 2 frets from where I am, I get up to the 15th fret. Okay. Now this is a whole tone above where we're bending from. Now there will be slight inaccuracies when you look at the way the guitar's tuned. But we should be pretty much nailed on. It shouldn't be too audible with our bend. We should be able to bend to that pitch with reasonable accuracy. So if I go bend my note here, I want it to reach that tone. And there it is. So what we're doing is we're picking a note and bending to it. So we're trusting our ears and we're using that ears to guide the bending technique. Now we can also do this with a semitone. So 1 fret above. And that gives you something to work to. Now in terms of exercising this type of technique, this is one of the hardest ones to exercise. It's a very tiring technique. So you only really need to give yourself a minute practice for this kind of thing and do lots of repetitions within a minute. And a great exercise using what we just did there is to play the note that we want to bend up to and then bend repeatedly up to it for 3 or 4 repetitions. And you'll get like a siren type effect to come out of your instrument. And what you want is you want that siren to be stable and consistent. If it's not quite consistent, then you need to do a little bit more practice and make sure you're getting this properly. And it's very tiring, so a minute is enough. Plenty of time. You'll actually probably struggle to get up to the whole minute using this particular technique. So if we take that tonal bend, the whole tone, which is 2 frets above, all we would do is we just play that note, and then we bend up to it. And repeat the bend without cutting off like I did there. That was a mistake. And then repeat. And that's it. So that's the bending technique. The focus is on having a good hand position, allowing your hand to be able to rotate. We focus on an upwards bend today. You can, of course, do a downwards bend. It's very similar in its approach. But it's all about the rotation of that arm. Make sure that you're in a good position and the fingers are touching, so they're all supporting each other. Then you've just got to focus on getting a good pitch accuracy with your bending. And this is a great thing to be able to do. And again, those microtonal things are really useful. So whilst we're bending a pitch there, we can really go to the microtonal things and play around with tension. And there's a lot of fun that can be had with that. For me, it's what makes lead guitar. I will stop the lesson there. Thank you very much for watching to this point. If you're interested in other lessons on technique, theory, or anything like that, please do hit that subscribe button. Feel free to comment on this video or any of my videos. I always welcome other people's tips and hints. That's a great thing to have. Hit the like button, share anything, all that kind of YouTube stuff. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you soon.